Is Archimedes the secret to lamprey control? Is pH a problem for Great Lakes fish? Do fish do, well, that thing that many local 8-year-olds want to know if they do? To find out, let's ask Dr. Fish. That's right. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Fish, a every other month show in which we ask pressing fish questions, science questions, and life questions to our two doctors fish. My name is Stuart Carlton, and I work with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and we are so excited to be here. I'm joined today by Carolyn Foley, not a Dr. Fish, but still very awesome, from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. And we are also joined today by not one but two doctors fish. First, we have Katie O'Reilly, Aquatic Invasives Outreach Specialist with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, Dr. Catfish on Twitter. And we are also joined by Titus Seiheimer, among the top two doctors fish with Wisconsin Sea Grant. Titus, Katie, welcome. And let's just hop right into it. We have a handful of stories we're going to talk about, but if you're live, I forgot, that's right, if you're live, you can look at YouTube, maybe you're at Facebook, and then you just type in a question, and our doctors fish will answer it, because that's what they do. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag AskDrFish, and we will monitor that, and we will bring in your questions there. And no question is too small. No job is too big, no fee is too big, and no question is too small for Ask Dr. Fish. So first of all, we have a story here. Our first story is brought to us by Wood TV in Michigan. They're talking about sea lamprey control in the Great Lakes. Now, Titus, I have a question. I thought sea lamprey were covered. I thought they were taken care of by lampricide. Why are we worrying about other methods of control?
Yeah, so a couple. It's a good question, Stuart. And the chemical treatment and for lamprey management has been a very important part of that. We're over 90% below where we were at historic lamprey levels. So it's overall a great story. But there's you can keep treating them. But as many of us know, there are issues throughout the Great Lakes Basin with things like barriers. Barriers can be good, like an old dam might block the sea lamprey from moving upstream. That's good news. They can't spawn upstream then. But it also, on the bad side, will block fish passage. So there might be some desirable fish we want to move up past that dam. And what we want to know is how can we move the fish we want without the things we don't want, like sea lamprey.
Like Titus said, the treatment with what's called a lampricide isn't 100% effective. So you're always going to get some lamprey that make it through. And then you also have the cost, the US and Canada together spend millions of dollars each year doing this treatment for lampreys, as well as even things like the COVID pandemic can disrupt how much treatment happens. So despite the success of the lampricide, we still have lamprey in the Great Lakes that are causing all sorts of sucky trouble.
Lamprey suck.
Yeah, that they do. So wait, did I hear you right, Katie? Millions of dollars? Is that how much they spend on this?
Each year, yeah. It is a big undertaking, both in terms of the cost of the treatment, as well as, just having people out there to apply this lampricide to the streams where the lamprey spawn.
Yeah, and it's, about $25 million a year. And it's a great story of invasive species management, of cooperation between the US and Canada, between the states and the tribes, everybody working together. So I think it's a good story, but at the same time, it is also costly. Like, what could we do if we didn't have these lamprey to control? What could we do with that $25 million a year? Like, you could do a lot of great habitat stuff.
But we have the lamprey instead. And so what is this new story? They're doing a fish pass. What is going on with this?
Yeah, so the fish pass story takes place around Traverse City, Michigan on the Boardman River. And it's really the story of the Great Lakes Restoration Project. This has been a somewhat like a 20-year restoration project to reconnect the Boardman River with Lake Michigan. And it would replace this old failing dam that would basically be a brand new complete barrier that will have the ability to sort fish, essentially, sort the good fish from the bad, quote unquote, bad fish, as Titus was saying. So letting native species move upstream into the lake kind of both ways. but preventing invasive species such as the sea lamprey from accessing habitat upstream where they aren't currently established.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of Fish Pass is it's also a research facility. So it is, really, it will be a location to study how can you selectively pass, some fish versus others, keeping lamprey down. So, that is, so it's not just a benefit to the Great Lakes. It can also, this could have applications all over the world because, fish movement and fish passage and barriers are not a Great Lakes issue. It's a global issue.
Yeah, and what's really cool too is, they're starting out sort of with manual sorting, so humans doing the sorting, but they're doing research to see if they could use things like AI and identification to basically automate the process of selecting, this is, like having cameras. And so like, this is a lamprey shape, so this fish doesn't get to pass, whereas this is native trout, and so it can pass essentially.
Or this is a non-native trout, but we want it to pass because it is a desirable sport fish.
Exactly. Yeah. Then we get into human subjectiveness again.
Fair enough. So they're going to have a little fish GPT or whatever. They're sort of measuring each one or deciding what it is and going, oh, that's cool. How are they going to get the fish up there? It's like a ramp? Do fish swim uphill? How does this work?
Yeah, and I think it is right now it would be, if you looked at that picture, there was kind of two different kind of parallel tracks that the fish could go into. And that gives them, some flexibility to test out different things, because this is really the research aspect of Fish Pass. So, how they will do that, I think, will depend on what the projects are. Yeah, because that last picture there. Yeah, you can see those, kind of two parallel kind of areas there. And it's going to be really cool, from a science communication perspective as well. There's going to be a lot of public access here. You can, walk over that bridge and talk to the public, or the public can see this science in action. So I think that's, great stuff.
Yeah. And one of the things I found cool about the article that kind of prompted this whole discussion was this idea of a tool called the Archimedes screw, which is something I hadn't actually heard about.
Is that so Archimedes comes and he sorts the fish, right? Is that how it works?
No, this was a game we played in college, but it was a little different. So for those of you watching live, it's an Archimedes screw, a picture or a video. We can do video live. That's one of the reasons we do this. And so they're showing it. This is a way it looks like they're getting that water up there without a lot of work, huh?
Yeah. So my understanding is basically it's this helix that is used to pull water up with relatively low energy. And they're trying to figure out if this could be a tool for also, in addition to pulling water up, pulling the fish up in a way that would hopefully not totally stress out the fish too much.
Yeah, and then having there's some kind of video picture-based sorting. I wasn't clear on if it was before they go in that Archimedes screw or after, but it's really cool to use technology to be able to, probably sort the fish and say, oh, you're a lamprey, you go downstream, you're out of here. But if you're a other fish, you get to go over the barrier. You get to ride on the Archimedes screw, which seemed, if I was a fish, I would enjoy that.
But you're not a fish. So we need to bring something up here as we're talking about innovations and moving fish. Stuart is absolutely obsessed with this salmon cannon, and I don't know if
salmon cannon.
Can you guys tell us a bit about the salmon cannon, and maybe we can take a look if
it's a cannon that shoots salmon. I mean, what more do you need to know? It's very straightforward.
I mean, it's there on the tin, but basically the salmon cannon became viral a couple of years ago. It's this instrument or equipment built by a company called Whoosh Innovations, which is so appropriate. Basically, I mean, it is a series of tubes in which you can put a fish, in this case a salmon, and it will literally pull the salmon over the man-made obstruction, so a dam, rather than what's a common way of moving salmon upstream is like collecting them, putting them on a water truck, and then driving up above the dam and putting them back into the river. So here's the video.
Katie, I think technically it whooshes over the dam.
Technically it whooshes. I think that's the appropriate terminology.
So is this has been used out west? Is that where it's installed right now?
That's my understanding, is a lot of this work has been done out on the Pacific coast, with the migratory salmon that are having a lot of challenges because they can't access their upstream habitat because of dams.
Yeah, the scale of these dams is really big. I mean, out west, they're huge dams. So, I think what's really cool about the salmon cannon is it can go over, some of these like are going way over these really tall embankments and dams. So, yeah, I'd love to get into one of those. Like, do they have a Dr. Fish size salmon, a Dr. Fish cannon yet?
Like, all right, let's go. I think that they do those when people get fired out of cannons at like baseball games and stuff. Maybe that can be a similar experience for you. So apparently we have a question from Facebook, and maybe we'll go to Titus on this one. What is the origin story of lamprey? But I'm gonna expand that slightly. What is the origin story of sea lamprey, invasive sea lamprey versus other lamprey?
All right. Yeah. So, sea lamprey, native to the North Atlantic. That's where they live. They attach to large fish out there. So think sharks, think, really big like bluefish along the coast. And what happened as humans settled, European folks settled the Great Lakes region. We wanted to move things. So we started building canals. You've heard of the Erie Canal. And what the Erie Canal does is connects the Hudson River, which is native sea lamprey habitat, to the Great Lakes system. So connected into Lake Ontario. And what the kind of neat life history of sea lamprey is they live out in the ocean or in the Great Lakes. And then they will migrate upstream. So that life cycle you've heard of with salmon, they move upstream, and that's what they did here. They moved up the Hudson, and they were like, I'm going to take a left, and I'm going to get into this canal. They got into the Great Lakes, kind of 1830s into Lake Ontario. Later, about I think the 1930s, they really showed up in the lakes above Niagara Falls, and it was they've been here ever since and caused a lot of problems.
And I'll just very, very quickly say why I said invasive sea lamprey is there are a lot of native lamprey. And if you want to learn more about those, Dr. Katie O'Reilly has a lot of really great information on her Twitter feed.
Yeah. And I'll just add, like Carolyn said, we've got 4 species of native lamprey in the Great Lakes too. And not all of those lamprey are parasitic as adults. Some of them, so essentially how the lamprey feeds is it sucks onto a fish and consumes various bodily fluids. But some of these lamprey, when they become adults, actually don't eat at all until they spawn and then they die. So that's kind of cool too. But there's a lot of cool facts about native lamprey. It could be its own Ask Dr. Fish show.
Yeah, I've got a whole box of plastic sea lamprey behind me, and if I had planned ahead, I would have had them, in the screen for all you watching live.
Cool. So let's move on. We have a couple of other stories that we wanted to chat about today. The second one comes to us from the Milwaukee Independent, and it's related to pH in the Great Lakes. So according to research being done at the Great Lakes Environmental Lab, is it the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab? I'm not sure. But the pH of the Great Lakes is decreasing, making it more acidic. So can you tell us, maybe we'll go to Katie first this time, why, how would this pH affect fish, and why might decreasing, how might that affect fish in the Great Lakes? Or, specifically Great Lakes here, but then maybe we can expand out to some others.
Yeah, so first off, I think it's good to just explain what pH is if it's been a while since your, high school chemistry class. But essentially, pH is a measure of how acidic or basic a liquid is. So if it's a lower pH value, we call it something more acidic, has a higher pH value, it's more basic. Natural waters in the Great Lakes have a pH typically around high 7, low 8, and pH can increase in water when it's in contact with carbon dioxide. So as humans have increased their emissions from burning fossil fuels, We've increased the amount of CO2 that's in the atmosphere, and that CO2 has to go somewhere. And part of the place it goes is into water, whether that's fresh water like the Great Lakes, or as you might have heard, the process of ocean acidification. You also have CO2 that gets into the ocean waters. And so when that carbon dioxide reacts with water, it basically disassociates and the water becomes more acidic. So that pH value goes down. And why that's of concern in both marine and freshwater systems is because we really don't know how this is going to play out with fish. There's been some lab studies that have shown that increased acidity in waters can sort of disrupt fish sensory processes, so they may not be able to hear as well, or they may not be able to detect predators as well. But a lot of these have been done in labs and on relatively small scales, so we don't have a great understanding of what might happen in these natural systems. There's also the concern that because, when you have more acidic water, that can dissolve things that make like shells. So you may have impacts lower down on the food web on the types of things that fish eat.
Oh, but so this is part of the problem, not so much Great Lakes, but when you hear about coral reefs and things like that, that ocean acidification, of course, is a problem. And that's why. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and that could be a challenge for things like oysters and clams, because they just can't form those shells if the acidity is too low. So, and if we turn back the clock to kind of our industrial, 60s and 70s, if you remember acid rain, and this was much higher concentrations and much more acidified lakes because of that. That was the sulfur going into the atmosphere, and then really lowering, and especially up in Canada, there were just a whole bunch of very acidified lakes that it was not good for fish, and that so. This is, a much different scale because it's much kind of, smaller amounts. And the Great Lakes are huge. So a very big volume of water. And then, to throw in, because I'm an ecologist, I like to throw in more complexity. Where I live near the Niagara Escarpment, which is limestone, that limestone, which is full of calcium, will actually buffer that acidity. So it won't actually go as low if you have this limestone or dolomite around. So, it may not even be equal. It might be, Lake Superior might have one, it might be a bigger impact there than other places.
Yeah, and I'll just add, it may not be that acidification is bad for all creatures too. In some cases, acidification may favor like certain types of algae or plants. So it's tough to tell. And that's part of why I think the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, part of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is starting to measure, the acidity of the Great Lakes. They've set up this sensor system in Lake Huron to start giving us baseline data that we can use to help increase our understanding and figure out what some of these impacts are going to be.
Cool. So I guess the other thing that's sticking in my head right now is you guys are talking about oysters and shells and stuff. And there is kind of a shelled organism that is at the base of Great Lakes food webs right now, zebra and quagga mussels. So I guess it'd be interesting to think about and see what kind of effects might happen there too. But we do have two questions. Hello, live viewers. So a shout out to Linda D, watching from Florida but live in Michigan. Keeping our fisheries healthy is awesome. Thank you, Linda.
Hey, Linda. Yeah, where are you in Florida? That's where I spent many years living in Florida. Where are you? So I can say hi to your fish, your local fish specifically.
All right. And then there's a question about lamprey from Kenyon S. What natural predators do lamprey have?
Yeah, so lamprey, okay, I would break that into two parts. So we have the life history part where they're in the streams. They actually spend most of their life in streams. They're filter feeders. So they kind of stick their heads up, filter the stuff coming down through the water. And so they could be, fish in those streams might eat them, birds, other animals. Then when they transform and become parasitic, they head out to the larger body of water like the Great Lake. And they don't have a lot of predators. I think there are reports of like lake trout lake trout, eating them. Like if something can eat them, they probably will, but they're generally down in the dark, not easy to predate on. So there's not a lot of predators out there.
And then I don't know if humans count as a natural predator, but I don't know that lamprey pie has really taken off in North America.
No, it hasn't, but I note their hot dog shape. I was just thinking about this. They are tubular, but they've got a little bit of a bite to them, I think. That not
Probably got a bit of mercury in them that,
Yeah.
might want to avoid.
That has been the problem. The mercury levels are so high that you can't actually export them, because they've actually looked at that, like sending them over to Europe where they want to eat them. Portugal, UK, this is a delicacy and they don't have enough over there. We've got more than we want. And, but yeah, that has been a problem.
We see there's a couple questions about how to reduce pH. We will check up that and then maybe get back to you, and you can maybe have a look at some other, because those, we don't know quite as much. We're fish people in the water. So, but we can take a look. There may be some resources around that we can share about that on with the recording of this down the line. So maybe we'll move to, because it's winter in the Great Lakes region, let's talk about ice. Okay, so there hasn't been a whole lot of ice on the Great Lakes this winter. So what does that mean for fish? Katie first.
Yeah, so for fish, ice is actually a really important part of their life cycles, especially for species such as lake whitefish in the Great Lakes, because these species spawn in the kind of late fall, early winter, and their eggs develop over the winter to hatch in spring. And so the ice basically provides a layer of protection from winter storms, from the eggs getting, thrown around, beat up. And so a lack of ice can really affect the hatching success of species like whitefish. But ice also has somewhat bigger landscape level effects on fish, because when you have less ice on the Great Lakes, you have more open water in the winter, and evaporation can be really high, leading to lower lake levels, which can affect how much habitat is available, as well as changing some, weather patterns and having, potentially more storms and less protection of the shorelines because you don't have that ice barrier. So it can have, both the immediate effects, say like on the eggs, but can also affect just the physical habitat of the lakes as well.
Yeah, and up on places, they're actually seeing more with less ice cover. There's actually more lake effect snow now in places like the Upper Peninsula, over in Michigan. So that, when you think snow now and then runoff later, that can just change the dynamic of kind of how much water is in those tributaries and when it's coming. So, lots of stuff changing. And this, the trends that we've seen, there's really good data set on Great Lakes ice cover back to the 70s. And, it does seem like it used to be a lot higher. And in the last 20 years or so, just kind of the average amount of ice is a lot lower. And, we saw a very large, significant storm on Lake Erie. Was that earlier, in the last couple months, like over the winter when Lake Erie usually would be covered in ice. And they had just huge, it was not covered in ice, huge waves, lots of coastal flooding. So, there's, impacts on the biota, impacts on people, and, and also really bad ice skating.
And ice fishing.
Yeah.
There's a guy in our neighborhood who has a big thing set up in the yard. It's like supposed to be it's like a huge kiddie pool essentially, but it's supposed to be an ice skating rink. And you can get some laps going on in it. 0 times this winter. 0 times has he been able to use it. He was at poker night the other night, bemoaning it. So shout out to Tim, and I'm sorry. Thinking about if you're interested in ice and warm winters, we actually just did an episode of Teach Me About the Great Lakes where we talked about it. And that is, we spoke with Dr. Richard Rood. He goes by Ricky, but in professional context, Dr. Richard Rood at the University of Michigan about warming winters, and he does a lot of climate science research. And it was an interesting conversation that you can find at teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com/75, the number 75. Or just, look for it in your pod feeder, your podcatcher, pod reader. Just search for it and you'll find it.
So thank you. And related to the conversation we were just having, Kenyon S again has a question. How sensitive are fish to weather cycles? And how does it affect kind of their metabolism and their survival rate? So, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when we think about the effects of weather on fish, you can think about what kinds of weather patterns are we seeing? Are we seeing increased precipitation in the form of storms, or like really heavy rain events that basically cause a lot of runoff to come to the lake? And things like that can lead to algal blooms that can, either in some cases provide like good nutritious algae for fish, or cause these nuisance blooms that can cause what we call hypoxia or low oxygen that would be negative towards fish. It kind of just depends a lot, what effect is that weather having on some of the things that the fish relies on. So it's food, it's habitat.
Yeah, and I'd say, on a shorter time period, like especially for fish, things like temperature are really important. Fish have a specific range of temperature. If you're a cold water species like a brook trout, and if those weather cycles are, making the water warmer in parts of the year, that could really limit like their survivability. They just can't survive if the water gets too warm. And I think, just thinking about winter, because we're, in the middle of this very kind of mild winter, at least where I'm at. And, for the last, 10,000 years, our winters were colder. And now if they're going to be a little warmer, if there's going to be more rainfall instead of snow, that means, runoff happening in the winter. Imagine if you're a fish that spawned in the fall. So, to kind of go back to the lake whitefish and the Cisco, or, burbot, which spawn right now under the ice, their eggs are out there over the winter. But if you have a big rainfall, which I think we're supposed to get rain this week here in Manitowoc. So, 20, 30 years ago, that would have been snow. That snow is going to sit on the landscape. It's going to melt in the spring. Now we're just getting it falling as rain in the winter. It's running off. So that is, affecting the kind of the biology of these fish.
Cool. And well, not necessarily cool, but interesting. There's interesting. So you talked a little bit about Cisco. And so can you explain, I'm going to go to Titus on this one. Can you explain what is the deal with the name Cisco?
Cisco.
It's not the internet, company or software company.
Yeah, it's not the food service. This came up during the Lakeys, I think, too. This is maybe the frequently asked question among Teach Me About the Great Lakes and what have you.
That's great. Katie, do you have an answer for that?
So I'm not actually sure where specifically the word Cisco or name Cisco comes from, but I will mention that there is a ton of confusion with regard to the name Cisco. So Cisco is the common name of one particular species of whitefish found in the Great Lakes. But there are also a ton of other whitefish species that are either called like short jaw Cisco, blackfin Cisco, and they're all very genetically similar. And it causes me at least a lot of heartburn and headache trying to figure out the phylogeny and how to communicate about this what's essentially called a species flock, or a group of species that are genetically pretty similar but have diverged in somewhat recent evolutionary speaking terms, and they're all called Cisco. So it's like,
what hello oh yes you're right, they're not separate species anymore. Okay. Yeah, I just had a call there. Oh, wait, it's ringing again. Oh, yeah, no, they are species now. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Hey, Titus, look down at your phone. Look down at that's one of these corporate university business phones, right? What's the logo on the phone that you keep answer the call?
Yes, this is a Cisco phone that I'm looking at. So it's like being surrounded by fish all the time. Yeah, and you may know Cisco as lake herring. So that is the kind of more like when I talk to a commercial fisherman up in Lake Superior, that's the herring fishery. It's not, don't call it a Cisco, because they have called them herring for a long time. They're not actually herring, which is why, it's kind of a misnomer in terms of common names.
So
what's the deal with the name Cisco?
Yeah, I need to do a host fail here because I sent the question over to Titus, but Titus was the one who asked it. So I think we're going to go to a short musical break, and then we'll be back.
I forgot that I asked that too.
With more.
I would have been more prepared for my own question.
Yeah, fair enough. Anytime we talk about lake ice, we have our lake ice theme song. So let's go with it.
All right, so it is February 13th, 2023, which means tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, one of the best things that comes out of Valentine's Day in recent years is fish valentines. So they're all over the internet. You see pictures, different organizations put them up. So for a second, we want to ask our audience, anyone who's live, if there's a fish valentine that you think is really clever, really awesome, please go ahead and share it. And then to our doctor's fish, do you have a favorite that you'd like to make sure everyone is aware of before tomorrow's big day?
I think mine is I only have walleyes for you.
Honestly, I think that's one of my favorites too. I was trying to find the image that has like the huge googly eyes on a walleye. Oh, come on.
That's a fish valentine? That's the whole thing? Oh.
We'll find it.
Well, for me, it's definitely going to be the burbot. And I'm going to just plug our recent episode from Wisconsin Sea Grant of the Fish Dish with Sharon Moen and Marie Zwiekoff, where they talked to me, Dr. Fish, lover of burbot, which, forget about Valentine's Day. It is Burbotines Day. This is the time of year when burbots are getting together under the ice. They're spawning in this wriggling ball of just slimy tubular fish.
And they're singing too, right?
And they are singing. They're also making noise, beating the muscles on their swim bladder, making sounds. So, the sounds of love under the ice, the wonderful burbot. So
a beautiful serenade.
Absolutely.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy Burbotines Day.
Burbotines
Day.
So we've got a couple of different options too. If you look at like the Shed Aquarium has some, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, who I think we were talking about them a little bit earlier, they have some. Illinois Indiana Sea Grant has some. So go ahead and take a look for those. We'll also try to add them in some links and share them via our social media so that they're ready for you. If you really want to express your love with a fish.
And you should. Everyone will appreciate it more.
Oh, lake trout, I've grown so attached to you.
Is that a lamprey?
It's a lamprey.
Oh.
It's a lamprey. Okay. Thank you,
It's
Tammy.
very, very on topic for today.
Yeah. All right. Tammy, do you have more of these? Yep, let's do it.
Roses are red. Sturgeon have scoots. They are great for protection, but also look pretty cute. Nice.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, do we
All
have...
right, Tammy, do you have one more? We got one more.
Yes, another lamprey. I'm
stuck on you with a terrifying lamprey face.
And I look rather terrifying, but also cute.
It's not their fault,
A face a mother lamprey could love.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of sturgeon and their scutes, I'll professionally transition from there. So Titus, you were out doing some sturgeon or talking about sturgeon spearing. What is the deal with sturgeon spearing? Tell me about this and why it shouldn't make me sad.
Well, I don't know if it won't make you sad, but so Wisconsin is home to one of the largest, I would say the healthiest lake sturgeon population in the world in the Lake Winnebago system. So Lake Winnebago is the biggest inland lake in within Wisconsin. You can see it in the northeast part of the state. They have a population of about 40 lake sturgeon, or 40,000 lake sturgeon. That's a lot of lake sturgeon. So there's a lot of them out there. And every winter, just starting on Saturday, 2 days ago, they, in February, have a 2-week spearfishing season for these sturgeon. So, it is really a great cultural event. Going out there, I actually met up with a colleague, and we kind of talked sturgeon and hung out over at by one of the check-in stations. And it is really it's a great it is a greatly managed, it's a success story for a fish management program, because sturgeon are struggling in a lot of places, but in the Lake Winnebago system specifically, there's been a long time love for these fish, and very, very early on they were, there was concerns about their populations. Protection happened a long time ago, so they are doing really well here. And even it is a little sad, because these are great big fish, but people really love them, and they it's that love of these fish that allows them to be protected. So it's an interesting story. It is, just a totally great management system too. Like, they have specific, like, every fish that is speared has to go and be checked in and registered with the DNR, every single individual fish. So there are not fisheries like that. And they check for the sex, they check for, the size of the fish, they look for tags if they were tagged historically. So, those fish are doing really well. And, the length of the season is 2 weeks maximum. It can close a lot faster if they hit these quotas. So they have very specific, amounts of females and males and juvenile fish that can be harvested. And if they hit those caps, season closes. So just a great management scene.
Yeah, and we're looking at some video here too that it looks like y'all took. That's neat. So I have a question then. With that season, is it like, so one of the big deals with the crab fishery in Alaska, right, the king crab fishery, was that when they had this sort of rodeo season, it became really dangerous, right? And this is when the idea of that is the deadliest job in America, non-raising children version, happened. Is this the situation with sturgeon too, where people are trying, it's so compact that you got to get them while you can, that it becomes dangerous, or do you not see that there?
No, I mean, it's there's kind of two different zones for the fishing. There's the up lakes region that generally has an individual quota there, and that generally they harvest those, and that closes early. Winnebago usually doesn't, and it comes down to things like water clarity. Like, if you have a really good water clarity season, you might hit those caps and close the season early. But I think they had 3,000 shacks out on the ice on Winnebago this weekend, which was half where it was last year. Because this is kind of we've been talking ice cover, and this has just it's not a great ice year out on Winnebago. People were driving their trucks out there. I don't know. Apparently no one dropped their trucks through the ice, so that's good. But it is, and the temperature was really warm this weekend, and people might just stay away. And I think they sell like 30,000 licenses, permits basically, for the opportunity to get one of these fish. And, people might go out there for a weekend, and, people will come here from out of state to, you can have a guide take you out to their shack, and, they've cut the hole, they have all the gear. And, so, hey, come on up to Winnebago and check it out sometime. It's definitely worth seeing. It is cool to see these, really big fish that you might not see other times. And then I would encourage you to come back in the spring when these sturgeon are spawning in the Wolf River and the Upper Fox, because you can actually, it's a happier story to see them joyfully spawning together alive than, dead on the ground getting checked in. But, it is, they're really cool fish. And
Well, and when they have,
Sturgeon are
so
great.
I'm the one who led us down this sad path. So yeah. But the thing is, in a well-managed fishery, this is something that people do, right? And sturgeons are just magnificent. And so but there are many magnificent things that people hunt. And so when it's well managed, I think that there's a lot of ways that you can do that well. But yeah, I strongly recommend going to see baby sturgeon too, because they're just cute with their little button nose. And we have a comment from Andrew in Facebook, and he said he just had a 60-minute spearing session on an inland or season. Andrew, was the whole season 60 minutes? 5 fish were allowed to be harvested. A big. What is this, Katie?
So this is on Black Lake in Michigan, and they also have a sturgeon population, but their quota is obviously much, much smaller. And so in recent years, the entire season has lasted, on the order of hours as opposed to weeks, as Titus mentioned for the Winnebago system. But again, even though it's this very closed amount of time, I don't think there's been a lot of deadliest catch type races, but I haven't actually been up there for Black Lake's sturgeon season.
So if you recall, was it last time or 2 times ago? I think it was last time where we read we acted out a radio play, a film noir style radio play. I'm envisioning another one involving spearing and people. So tune in next. Carolyn says no, that means it's a good idea. When that no comes instantly, that's when I know that I'm on the right track. But let's move on. We have one more story to talk about. And so this one got spawned. So this idea got spawned, like Burbot's singing an opera, when my kids brought home a book from the library. And this book was called Does It Fart? ? And I happened to glance at the book. I was like, well, this is an interesting book discussing whether or not things fart. And I noticed the illustrations were by Ethan Kosak, who has done the Ask Dr. Fish artwork. So that beautiful blue artwork that you see was done by somebody who's drawn pictures of animals farting, apparently. And so that's fine.
So I think we're definitely, it was very appropriate for us to be in this.
Well, do fish scientists farts? The answer to that is a definite yes. I've been with fish scientists. I know what's happening there. But Katie, do fish fart specifically?
The answer is yes, but only some fish. So one of the most, we're not talking, farting across the fish orders. But one of the most notable are the ocean herring. So Titus was talking about how Cisco's called lake herring, but the ocean herring actually have been documented by scientists to communicate with their farts. So basically the bubbles that come out of their butts are used to help them school as a group. So increase that group communication, which sounds like the most 8-year-old boy way of communicating I've ever heard of. But that's apparently how herring keep in school.
And now I'm going to ask, do fish have butts? Is my next question.
That's a good question. I mean, I guess it considers how you define a butt.
Because you just said they did, Katie. So I don't know.
All right, for the record, we're on PBS. We're on a PBS affiliate Facebook page right now. All right, and I encourage you listeners.
Stuart, we're scientists. It's okay. We're scientists.
This is a scientific discussion of anatomy.
So they have to communicate by farts because they're hard of herring, right? Just thought of that. That could be a Valentine right there.
And apparently with the herring bubbles story, Sweden actually thought that they had Russian submarines in their waters, and it turned out that it was just herring farts.
Oh my goodness.
So what you're telling me is herring farts, could be a national security issue.
Right. They might launch international events. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure is brilliant. Good call. So when the herrings do, I guess you don't know, but do they release little, I guess there's enough bubbles to cause a nuclear incident potentially. So, thanks, herring.
Well, herring are a schooling fish, so you're going to have big groups of them. So I guess, depending on how many herring you've got in a group, you could have potentially a lot of bubbles.
Yeah, the actual, I would debate, is this really a fart? So the biology here, it's so these herring have swim bladders, and the swim bladder has 2 openings, and what the swim bladder does, it helps the fish be neutrally buoyant. Some fish have them, some fish don't. Sharks don't have swim bladders, that's why they sink and they need to keep swimming. Gobies your goby dogs do not have swim bladders because they want to stay on the bottom. So they can take air in because they want to keep that swim bladder inflated. And then they have this other kind of passage where they can push some of that swim bladder gas out through the anus, and that's where you get your bubbles coming from.
Yeah, it doesn't make a bubble. I think the bubble is there's got to be a time component, right? If you slowly emit over time, then it's probably not a fart, but there's got to be a time, and I think the bubble could be a physical manifestation of there's a certain force or time aspect. I don't know.
And it seems like they're definitely, they're making I don't know if it's a conscious decision, but it is, they're forcing that gas out of the swim bladder and creating those bubbles. So that seems like there's they're frightened, and out come the bubbles.
We could ask Judge Sean Hodgman, I guess.
Yeah. So this is when you said, we'll do an AI generated story. I think a better use of a future Ask Dr. Fish is further discussion of what does it really mean to pass gas through?
Yeah. No, ChatGPT. No, it is good, but ChatGPT really has cut back on the fart humor lately. I've heard.
Yeah, you've heard. I'm sure.
So we'll have to see.
All right. So in past Ask Dr. Fishes, we have had a kind of challenge at the end. Stuart, do you want to introduce our challenge for today?
I do. This challenge is a new one that we're calling Which Fish Story is Not a Fish Story? So what we're going to do is we have randomly selected an order for people to go. And Titus, so as you recall, Katie O'Reilly won 20 questions last episode. Actually, to tell you the truth, Katie O'Reilly was gifted in celebration of Fishmas. But the thing is, a win is a win, right? A win is a win, even if the win is a gift. Just ask the Kansas City Chiefs after that football game last night. But regardless, so Katie is going to go. So Titus, Carolyn, and then me are going to read a story. Two of these fish stories either are or are not fish stories, depending on what you mean by fish stories, because two of them are fake and one of them is real. Katie's job is to identify the real story. So Titus, what is your fish story?
All right. Alabaster Smith of Leamington, Ontario, recently discovered that yellow perch were good for more than just Friday night fish fries. Smith, a commercial fisherman, saw fish leather for sale on a recent trip to Iceland and thought this was a great new product that he could sell at his retail shop. After months of tinkering in his workshop, Smith developed a yellow perch shoe, complete with fins and spines. "It certainly looks good," said Smith, "but I'll be darned if I haven't gotten poked with spines a few times putting these shoes on. And I keep getting followed around by otters."
Yellow perch fish leather by Titus. Carolyn, tell me your fish story.
Windsor resident Matt Gervais says he's not much of an angler, but now he's got a crazy fish story to tell with the scars to prove it. The local triathlete and endurance sports coach is still recovering after his right hand was chomped by a hungry muskellunge while he was swimming in Lake St. Clair last weekend. "It was an intense pain, almost like burning," Gervais said. "It took me a moment to understand what exactly was going on. A real ugly fish, big eyes, big teeth." Gervais and his swimming partner managed to reach a residential property on the shore without submerging Gervais's damaged hand. The property owner, alerted by their sounds, came out to help as well. Once Gervais had some emergency bandaging, he went to a Tecumseh walk-in clinic for assessment and treatment. Despite his experience, Gervais doesn't blame the muskie. In fact, his only frustration is that his injury will prevent him from training properly for his next event, an Ironman 70.3 race in Muskoka on August 29th.
Triathlete, maimed, mauled by a muskie. Oh my goodness. All right, and the third fish story is this. Now, we've all gotten skunked on a fishing trip before, but have you ever gotten skunked on a fishing trip? Well, that happened to Ainsley Nelson of Salina, Ohio recently. Nelson was trying to escape those midwinter blues by fishing on Grand Lake St. Mary's. After several casts of nothing, she felt a tug on her line and excitedly reeled in a skunk that she had accidentally snagged. She felt hooked it. "At first, I thought the smell was just an early algal bloom," said Nelson, "since the weather's been really warm this winter. But then I realized it was much worse than that." Scientists say that with the changing climate, skunks are having to turn more and more to the water to look for food, and that anglers will probably come across them with increasing frequency. Well, there's no license for skunk, said Ben Mitchell of the Ohio DNR, but I would advise fishers to catch and release. Well, catch and release and probably change your clothes before you go home. So that is story number 3. So we have yellow perch, fish leather. We have a triathlete with a maimed by a muskie, and we have snagging a skunk. Katie O'Reilly, for all of the points, which of these is the true story?
Oh, they all have like kernels that I could believe. But I think I'm gonna have to go with the triathlete muskie story, just because knowing a bunch of triathletes, that would be like, that's just such a real line to say. I'm not mad at the fish. I just am mad I can't swim as much, or this is going to affect my training. So I feel like that's got to be the right one.
Fantastic. In a more professional show, we would have something for the big reveal, but instead, will the real fish story teller chime in? There we go. We're up on the screen right now.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. There's actually quite a lot more detail in there. And as you can see on the image, he had gotten bitten. I debated leaving that bit in because I was like, if you know triathletes,
I know triathletes.
I thought you might. Fun fact, I would also like to note that I actually know Matt Gervais in real life. So I asked Stuart if I would somehow get bonus points if I knew the person. Ooh. Because we used to compete in the same track and field kind of area, but I did not go triathlete. So I believe you win, Katie.
I win.
That's right.
I don't know what I win here.
You win the game. You win the Ask Dr. Fish prize, which is 30 seconds of soapbox time, which starts when Carolyn counts down from 3.
Can I gift mine? Because
no
Titus
gifting. This is enough. You're not.
No.
Well, she's maybe doing it in the spirit of Valentine's Day.
Okay.
This is for the spirit of Bourbontine's Day.
There you go.
This is the traditional Bourbontyne gift.
All right.
It's soapbox
so
time.
I do gift my soapbox to the Bourbontyne king.
Well, you
Titus.
have to sing your gift if you're going to be doing it for Bourbontyne, I think so. Take it away, Titus. 30 seconds in 3, 2, and 1.
All right. I want to just encourage everyone to get out there and enjoy what's left of winter. Here it's certainly a lot nicer if you can get out on the snow and on the ice. And maybe it's not too late to try ice fishing this winter. You might get hooked, and it's also a lot of fun. And hey, maybe bring your ice skates. If you don't catch any fish, get some skating in.
Fantastic. Thank you. And my understanding is we have 1 or 2 more of these absurd and bad fish Valentines to share before we go. Carolyn, take it away.
So first, I would like to note that there were some people who were listening along who were also correct with their guess about which story was true. And Titus, who wrote the story about fish shoes, there was a request that somebody would like to have those shoes. So, all right. So we were going to say if there are any more ridiculously awesome I've only got walleyes for you. That's one of my favorites. Walleye's a cool fish, too.
It is a cool fish.
Like, objectively, it's a cool
fish. Cool fish, yes. Deserves a much better.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, come on. It's great. Well, we could sing that one for you if you want. You always love it when I start singing, so.
You're the apple of my walleye.
You're the apple of my walleye.
All right. Excellent. And then one more. This one speaks to my heart, given my master's degree working on Red Horse. Tammy, or Titus, whoever put the one in the thing, do the thing.
Yeah, so I did put a link to I'm a Sucker for You from the Fish Commission with a beautiful white sucker.
There we go. It's a beautiful white
Who doesn't
sucker.
love suckers?
Whom among us doesn't love suckers? There it is. Oh, and look, it's got a little heart for a lamprey mouth.
Little heart-shaped kiss from a sea lamprey.
No better way to celebrate than a little heart-shaped kiss. Ask Dr. Fish is brought to you by the fine people at Illinois, Indiana, Sea Grant, Wisconsin, Sea Grant, and Go Be Dog Media. The show is produced and hosted by Stuart Carlton, Carolyn Foley, Dr. Fish, Katie O'Reilly, Dr. Fish, Titus Seiheimer. Our live broadcast guru is the incomparable Tammy Winsel. And the whole thing is produced by our pals at Great Lakes Now. The podcast version of the show is edited by the awesome Quinn Rose, and we encourage you to check out her work at aspiringrobot.com. Podcast artwork is by Ethan Kosak. You can view his portfolio at Ethan Kosak, that's KOCAK.com. Maybe there'll be drawings of farts there, I'm not sure, but go check out the book anyway. If you have questions for the Doctor's Fish, just send an email to askdrfish@gmail.com. Use the Twitter hashtag AskDrFish. If you're still on Twitter and know how to see tweets, which not all of us do, we have a fish hotline. Why don't you call it 765-496-IISG. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you live on YouTube and Facebook and who knows where else at 11 Eastern on the second Monday of every month. And in between now and then, if you have fish questions, science questions, or life questions, just ask Dr. Fish.